Welcome to Beyond the Template, the More Than Just Talk podcast, created by me, Caroline Amelie, a writer, artist, counselor, and learning designer. Today we're talking about slow and steady meets the goal this week as we move out of our initial assessment of purpose for our projects into analysis of strategy. And we'll hear the story of someone whose biographer called the most dramatic rags to riches story ever told, Charlie Chaplin. Hey there, and thanks for joining today. Happy Friday. I hope the week went well. Welcome to those who are checking us out for the first time, and welcome back to my loyal listeners. Since this is our 5th episode, I'm going to do something special this week. I want to dedicate this entire episode to storytelling, taking a break from pushing for progress on our projects. That was a mouthful. I love to mix things up. I think I'll do this every 5th episode from now on. What do you think? Send me your feedback. I'm also going to add the full theme song at the end for anyone wanting to hear it instead of breaking it up at the beginning. I wrote and performed it myself, and I hope you enjoy. It is short and sweet. Before I get into my expander of the week, here's a reminder about how this podcast typically works. In about 15 to 20 minutes, you'll get some good news to lift your spirits to keep being creative even when it feels like the world is too dark for creativity. You'll hear about my pitfalls, struggles, procrastination, fear, but also my wins. I'll share my expander of the week, or someone who inspired me to keep going. Let's be real, most of us aren't into Nepo babies and silver spoon people anymore. My favorite expanders weren't the exception to the rule. They were people just like me and you. And finally, I encourage my listeners to engage. This podcast is about action. So each week I give out homework, which is always added to my blog for you to download for free. These will include takeaways and easy to complete work, usually reflection questions. I call them my honey, you better do lists. I promise that if you really want to see progress, you have to do the work. Taking action is the single most consistent thing needed to create, and I'm a believer that action can actually affect both your thoughts and emotions. So if you're creating, you're uplifting and empowering yourself as well. Now you see why it's a more than just talk podcast. So let's get into it, starting with the good news of the week. Links for the following news announcements can be found in my blog and on YouTube if you're curious to read more. A judge ordered the Trump administration to restore $500 million in grant funding to UCLA. A WFP report finds 80 million more children now are supported by national school meal programs worldwide. There is a cafe run entirely by deaf baristas where you not only get to order in sign language, but they will teach you how. And a new documentary on anxiety and depression is coming out to profit mental health support and focuses on stand-up comedians and their struggles. My expander of the week is a perfect example of how someone can be in the spotlight as being lighthearted and funny, but have deep wounds they are working through internally and through generational trauma. Most of us have heard his name, but not many know his story. My expander this week is Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin is remembered today as one of the most important figures in film history, a man whose humor, pathos, and creativity reshaped cinema forever. Yet his path to becoming an icon was not smooth or straightforward. His life was marked by poverty, abandonment, political persecution, and constant reinvention. The hardships of his childhood in late Victorian London, the struggles of his early career, and the immense challenges he faced, even at the height of his fame, all make his story a profound example of how success is rarely easy, but always worthwhile. Chaplin's journey shows that brilliance can emerge from the darkest circumstances and that creativity can be a means of survival, resistance, and transformation. Charlie Chaplin was born on April 16th in 1889 in London, England. His parents, Hannah Chaplin and Charles Chaplin Sr., were both entertainers in the music halls, which were the most popular form of live entertainment in Britain at the time. But success in that field was unstable, and Chaplin's early years were shaped more by poverty than by glamour. His father, though a singer of some reputation, abandoned the family when Charlie was still very young. He provided no consistent support, and soon he died of alcoholism when Charlie was just 12. His mother, Hannah, tried desperately to keep the family together through her own stage work, but her fragile health and eventual struggles with mental illness made that impossible. By the time Charlie was about 7, the Chaplin family had slipped into the harshest levels of poverty. For families in London at the time who could no longer support themselves, the government-run workhouse system was the only safety net. The workhouse was not a charity, but an institution designed to be deliberately unpleasant in order to discourage reliance on public support. Families were often separated. Conditions were harsh, food was minimal, and the residents were expected to work long hours on menial, exhausting tasks. For children, it was a grim environment that combined punishment with survival. Charlie and his half-brother Sidney were sent to Lambeth Workhouse in 1896. Later, they spent time at Hanwell School for Orphans and Destitute Children, where conditions were only slightly better. In these institutions, children were dressed in rough uniforms, subjected to strict discipline, and given little in the way of comfort or opportunity. This experience left an indelible mark on Charlie. The sense of abandonment, the humiliation of poverty, and the sight of so many others suffering around him became sources of deep empathy and later material for his art. His films would often highlight the struggles of poor and the absurdity of social inequality, a direct reflection of his own early life. Despite these hardships, Chaplin discovered performance early. His mother, though often too ill to provide for him, had once been a talented singer and performer. On one occasion, when Hannah lost her voice mid-performance, young Charlie was pushed onto the stage to finish the act. To the audience's delight, he mimicked her with uncanny charm. It was the first glimpse of the talent that would define his life. Chaplin joined a clog dancing troupe called the 8 Lancashire Lads when he was just 9 years old, touring Britain and learning the rigors of performance. He then worked in small theater roles and pantomimes, steadily building his skills in comedy, timing, and physical expression. By his early teens, he was already recognized as a gifted comic actor. His big break came when he was hired by Fred Karno's prestigious vaudeville troupe. Karno was a master of slapstick comedy and pantomime, and under his guidance, Chaplin refined the art of conveying complex emotions without words. In 1910, Chaplin toured America with the Karno Company. For the young man who had once been confined to the workhouse, the trip was life-changing. America's booming entertainment industry offered new possibilities, and Chaplin quickly caught the attention of film producers. By 1914, he was signed to Keystone Studios in Hollywood, beginning his career in motion pictures. At Keystone, Chaplin developed the character that would make him a global sensation, the tramp. Dressed in oversized shoes, baggy pants, a tight coat, a bowler hat, and a cane, the tramp was a figure at once comic and tragic. He was clumsy, often the butt of jokes, yet possessed dignity, wit, and resilience. For audiences worldwide, he was instantly relatable, embodying the struggles of ordinary people trying to navigate a world stacked against them. Chaplin's films were revolutionary because they combined slapstick humor with deep emotion. In shorts like The Tramp, 1915, and later feature films like The Kid, 1921, Chaplin blended comedy with social commentary. In The Kid, for example, the story of an abandoned child mirrors Chaplin's own early experiences of poverty and separation, while wrapping them in humor and tenderness. His ability to connect personal pain to universal themes gave his films an enduring power. By the 1920s, Chaplin was one of the most famous people in the world. He co-founded United Artists in 1919 alongside Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and D.W. Griffith, giving him unprecedented creative control over his work. Unlike many actors of the time, Chaplin wrote, directed, produced, scored, and starred in his films, making him one of cinema's first true auteurs. His masterpieces, including The Gold Rush, 1925, City Lights, 1931, and Modern Times, 1936, established him as both comedian and a philosopher of the screen. Yet, success did not shield Chaplin from barriers. His personal life was often under public scrutiny, with several controversial relationships and marriages making headlines. But more significantly, his political views placed him in conflict with the rising wave of suspicion and conservatism in the United States during the mid-20th century. The 1940s and early 1950s in America were dominated by the Red Scare, a period when fears of communism gripped the nation. Politicians, particularly Senator Joseph McCarthy, led campaigns against suspected communists in government, entertainment, and other industries. The House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, held investigations and hearings, and many in Hollywood were blacklisted, losing their careers even if they were suspected of leftist sympathies. Chaplin, though never a member of the Communist Party, was outspoken in his criticism of fascism, poverty, and inequality. His 1940 film, The Great Dictator, directly mocked Adolf Hitler at a time when the U.S. was still officially neutral in World War II. The film's final speech, in which Chaplin calls for human decency, kindness, and democracy, was widely praised, but also marked him as politically radical in some circles. Later, his advocacy for peace with the Soviet Union after the war, combined with his refusal to adopt American citizenship despite decades of residency, made him a target. By 1952, the U.S. government had grown increasingly hostile. When Chaplin traveled to London for the premiere of his film Limelight, his re-entry permit to the United States was revoked. Effectively blacklisted, he chose to settle in Switzerland with his family, where he lived for the rest of his life. The exile was a painful blow. After building his career in America, he was forced to abandon it due to politics beyond his control. Though exiled, Chaplin did not stop creating. From Switzerland, he continued to make films, including A King in New York, 1957, which directly satirized McCarthyism and the paranoia of the Red Scare. In 1972, long after the hysteria of that period had subsided, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences invited him back to Hollywood to receive an honorary Oscar. The ovation he received lasted 12 minutes, the longest in Academy history. It served as a vindication and a recognition of his enduring contributions to cinema. Chaplin's influence is impossible to overstate. He helped define the language of film itself, proving that motion pictures could be more than entertainment. They could be art, social commentary, and a mirror of the human condition. His tramp character remains one of the most iconic images in world culture, a symbol of resilience, humor, and dignity in the face of hardship. Charlie Chaplin's life story demonstrates that success is rarely a straight path. From the crushing poverty of the workhouse to the glitter of Hollywood, from global fame to political exile, his life contained extraordinary highs and devastating lows. Yet at every stage, Chaplin used creativity as his means of survival and resistance. His comedy was not an escape from suffering, but a way of transforming it into something meaningful and universal. For anyone aspiring to create, whether in art, business, or life, Chaplin's story is a reminder that beginnings do not define destinies. He started with nothing, was cast aside by society, and faced barriers that might have silenced him. Instead, he turned those very obstacles into the raw material of genius. His films remain timeless, not just because they make us laugh, but because they remind us that laughter can exist even in the darkest times, and that persistence and creativity can leave a legacy that outlives every hardship. All right, creatives, let's turn it back to you. It's time to grab your notebook. This coming week, together, we will be completing what is called a task analysis for our projects. All key concepts and reflection questions can be found in my blog for you as a free digital download. This, along with the full transcript. Links can be found in the podcast description. The following asks you to reflect on how you, the creative and the expert, can better understand what is needed for yourself to create and for your audience to fully engage and be impacted by your creative work. Here are your reflection questions. Part 1. On where you are in your own creative journey. Number 1. List any and all skills and knowledge you presently have, which will support you addressing the previously identified needs. This will help you see the gaps between where you are today and what is still needed before starting the project on your end. Number 2. What new skills and knowledge might you need to successfully complete your creative work? This is important if you're learning as you go and trying to create in a way you have not before. Section number 2, on where your audience might be when engaging with your work for the first time. Number 3, what, if any, should your audience already know in order to successfully understand the purpose and themes of your creative work? For creatives who are trying to communicate a specific message, this is important. Number 4, what, if any, should your audience already be able to do in order to successfully participate in your creative work? For creatives who are hoping to create something interactive or within a physical space, this is important. And number 5, what are the vehicles of communication from creative to audience, which may be crucial components in the work? These may or may not be important depending on where you're coming from or what you're working on. These might include facts, names, symbols, labels, places, dates, definitions, descriptions of objects or events. Concepts, groups of similar or related ideas, events, or objects. Principles and rules, the relationships between two concepts. Procedures, an ordered sequence of steps. Interpersonal skills, verbal and nonverbal skills for interacting with other people. Attitudes, predispositions towards behavior, and responsibilities. Why are these questions helpful for a creative to consider? First of all, by defining the content of your work, you'll be able to see the direct relationship between the work and the needs you want to alleviate and the problems you want to solve. Next, many creatives are great at large-scale concepts because they can connect the dots. But this will help break things down into smaller steps for audience members who are unfamiliar. And finally, this is, in my opinion, the most important reason. It allows for empathy. Seeing the content from the audience's point of view or their perspective will ensure nothing is missed. It helps gain deeper insights into how to make your creative work impactful. I wish you all good luck with your work next week. I'm looking forward to diving in myself. Next week, we'll have us back to the normal podcast structure. I'll share my own reflections, share with you what I learned, and tell you about one of my all-time favorite artists who I first discovered as an undergrad. Thank you all for joining me. If you have any feedback on how to make this the best podcast out there, please email me at camelielebuff@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Template. You're doing great. Keep it up. Keep it creative. My name is Caroline Amelie LeBuff. I have a degree in art and in counseling, and also professional level certificates in educational advising and learning design and technology. Roles I have carried include illustrator, photographer, writer, traveler, mentor, instructor, and most recently, entrepreneur. If you are curious to learn further about the work I offer my clients, check out camelidesigns.com. That's camelidesigns.com.